Hey guys, how are we doing? I figured today we would take a note on the quality that your fence needs to be when dealing with sheep. And I mean specifically sheep. Goats, the reason I say specifically sheep is because goats have a tendency to crawl on fences a lot more. And then what happens, they crawl up here and then they lean a little forward and then they flop on the other side if you got a loose fence. And bulls, cows, and steers, cattle, if they come lean on this sucker and your cow or steer weighs 1,000 pounds, they might just fall through it, So I'm not talking about those species. It's specifically about sheep. And just for some reference, we're in the middle of central Kansas. We came here from central Texas. We got an operation in central Texas and now central Kansas, and we're selling this property. But when we got here, we had sheep to move and we had no fence. We bought the property with no fence on it. And this pasture's pretty good, and it's got a tank in the middle, so that's an important aspect when you're building, because the smaller the pen, the better quality your fence has to be. That's why in auction barns, when you walk in the back, everything is steel pipe. They don't go in there and put wire in there. Why? Because you got a bunch of animals tightly compact in a situation they're super stressed about, and now you don't know what they're going to do. You need to make sure when they hit the fence, it's going to be steel, it's going to be pipe, they're going to hit it and it's not going to go anywhere. This is not that situation. This is a good pasture, and I knew the sheep I was putting in here weren't crazy wild. Now, honestly, I wouldn't mind putting crazy wild sheep in here. I would just have to build a really good catch pen, because the crazy wild sheep would stay in here, but when I went to go catch them, then they might be flying over the top of this fence. But I knew the ones I was putting in here wasn't that big of a deal. We put up this fence so quick, you can see that corner post. That's literally what it is. It's not a corner brace, it's a corner post. And we dug the other hole for this post to go up and to weld these together. But we were in such a rush, we didn't even get the other post in. We just put that one in, cemented it in, and then got to stringing basically. This first T-post is 20 feet away, but all the others are 16 after it. And it's a tall T-post. It's a 7-footer. That's why it looks so tall. So this tells you how much give. And then when we tightened it, we used the back of my truck and we tightened it on, and we didn't use there's no braces in the middle of any of these things. So some of these fence lines are 400 feet long, 550 feet long. Let that wind settle. So they're like a roll and a half. So we just combined them in the middle, combined the wire in the middle, and kept going with nothing but T-post. So I know when you look it up on Google, if you look it up with any hobby or industry or anything ever, it says like, this is how you do it, this is how you do it. But then when you talk to the people that are doing it, that's not how they do it often. And they know where they can cut corners and where they can. I knew no matter what, this fencing situation was gonna be temporary. So I knew this was a corner I could cut. This pen held 16 sheep. It held up to a snowstorm. Didn't check on them for 3 or 4 weeks. I knew there was water in there. I knew that they could dig through the snow for the grass. It's not an easy living, but it's a living for the sheep. And it did just that. It didn't have any escapees, and this was a good pen and solid. And you see this bend, you see that fold, and it's not something to be scared of or to you can even take some pride in it if you want, if you build the fence yourself. Now, if you pay somebody to build the fence, you make sure it's not like this. If it's got this much bend on the top line, and it's like this, and you paid them probably $4 a foot or something, maybe $4.50 a foot, that's with them buying the materials, then you go talk to them and you make sure that gets fixed up. But if you're building it yourself and you're just trying it for the first time, just know this will almost always do. I don't care if you got Katahdin or Katahdin, however you say that one. I don't care if you got Dorper, I don't care if you got Australian Whites. I raise horn sheep. My sheep, man, them suckers are wild son of a gun. And we got Dorpers and all of them too, but that's Central Texas. This is Kansas. And I knew this would be good enough for them. Like, this will contain some wild sheep. The main thing you have to worry about is like with something like a goat, is just they'll step here, they'll be on the inside, we're on the outside. They'll be on the inside and they'll step 1 foot up here, and then they'll step 1 foot up here, and then they'll try to eat, there's some trees down there, they'll try to eat some leaves, and as they're leaning, they'll literally lean over, and then they'll fall. That's how heavily they'll stretch. So that's what you gotta be worried about with that. And with that, I figured with these videos, I'd throw some history onto them. If you've ever heard the name Aristotle, which almost everybody has, then you probably have also heard the name Alexander the Great, which you might know more than Aristotle. Aristotle was a philosopher, and he was basically a tutor, one of many, but a tutor to Alexander the Great. And there's also this other philosopher. He's Diogenes, the Cynic, is what they call him. And Cynic, in their language, Greek or whatever, it meant dog-like. And to understand, Alexander the Great was civilized, Aristotle was civilized, Plato, who taught Aristotle, was civilized. They were all super high-end, and they were known people. Diogenes was super known, but Cynic means dog-like, so it basically means Diogenes the dog. And where that comes from is one time a guy on the street, because Diogenes lived out of what's equivalent to like a barrel or something. He lived out of a barrel, and he was a beggar. Let that wind calm down. He was a beggar on the side of the street, and he would talk philosophy with everybody that wanted to hear, women, everybody. He didn't discriminate. But then he would sit there and beg, and one of these times a guy called him. They go, "You're a dog." So what was his response? He walked over there and peed on his leg. And then when the guy got mad, he goes, "Why are you mad? You called me a dog." So that's the type. He was super anti-materialism. He didn't own anything. There's the story of the only thing he owned was a wooden bowl, and then one day he saw a kid drinking out of a stream with his hands cupped, and when he saw that, he threw away the wooden bowl. He goes, "Why do I need this?" So this is the type of man we're talking about. Now, here's the history I want you to know. Alexander the Great had heard of Diogenes, and he admired the stories he'd heard of Diogenes. So when he was in the town where Diogenes was, he went to Diogenes, and the way he walked up is something of the sort of Diogenes was laying in his barrel, and the sun was to Alexander's back when he walked up to Diogenes looking down, so he was blocking the sun. And Alexander goes, "Diogenes," he goes, "I have the world at my feet," basically is what he says. He goes, "I have the world at my feet." He goes, "Ask for anything and I'll give it to you." And he goes, "Will you stop blocking my sunlight?" That's what he asked of Alexander. And you can almost picture yourself as Alexander thinking, "Man, I rule the world, basically, the known world. I am the man of man, basically." And this dude just said this. And if it was anybody lesser, and if Alexander didn't admire Diogenes, then he probably would have had him killed. But you can just imagine after hearing that and kind of being startled and then almost chuckling about it, Alexander goes, "If I was not Alexander, I would like to be Diogenes." And Diogenes' retort to that was, "If I was not Diogenes, I would also like to be Diogenes." And with that, I wish you all a good one. The fence doesn't matter as much as you think it does. And I hope you all have a blessed week wherever you're at.